Good morning, LAPCS scholars. How are you doing? It is a wonderful Sunday that I'm recording these things. I spent a lot of time outside today, getting some vitamin D and unsuccessfully fishing. So I hope you guys got out yesterday and did some fun stuff. And when I say yesterday, I mean Sunday, because that's when I'm recording. Anyway, so the Roaring 20s. So now we've finished the Progressive Era and Woodrow Wilson in World War I. Now we get into the 1920s. All right, the election of 1920, Warren G. Harding was a Republican. He wanted a return to normalcy. He was going against James M. Cox and Eugene V. Debs, who was a socialist. He received 913,000 votes, despite the fact that he was in jail. Go figure. But this is how it fell. All that pink is Republican, which was Harding. So he pretty easily won that election. So he was the president from 1921 to 1923. Sorry. He wanted to return to normalcy, to normal life after World War I. He created this. He helped create the Emergency Quota Act in 1921, which was a referendum that put a certain quota on the amount of immigrants that could come in from other countries. There was also the Washington Naval Conference in 1922, 1923, which was a big gathering of people to discuss the Navy. The Teapot Dome scandal, which we'll talk about, and Harding died in office when he died, Calvin Coolidge became the president. The election in 1924, Coolidge had taken over for Harding and sought election. He won easily. He was the guy who was a business of America people. The business of the American people is business. So he really wanted the economy to grow. And there were things that happened during this time, like the National Origins Act, which favored people who had been born in the country as opposed to people who came in as immigrants. And then the Kellogg-Briand Pact of 1928, which we will talk about later. The election of 1928, Herbert Hoover and Al Smith, who was a Democrat and the first Catholic person to try to become president. Hoover won easily, and we will talk about Hoover in due time, because next week we'll be talking about the Great Depression, and Hoover was the president that oversaw that happening, even though a lot of it happened, a lot of the things that created the Great Depression happened before he became president, but we will discuss that. Herbert Hoover, he was a Republican from 1929 to 1933. Given the chance to go forward about the policies of the last 8 years, we shall soon be in sight of the day when poverty will be banished from this nation. During the Great Depression, he really tried to get people to volunteer. During the Great Depression happened, it was set off by the Great Market Crash of 1929, which we will be talking about next week when we talk about the Great Depression. So there were other things, but basically these were all reforms that Herbert Hoover tried to create in order to help people who were affected by the Great Depression, which was pretty much everybody. The American Consumer Society. Now, these are the things that some of these things impacted the Great Depression, the start of the Great Depression, which we'll talk about next week. This is during the 1920s. Welfare capitalism. So real income increases, higher rate for owners and managers and skilled labor, people who had gone to learn a trade. Minimal increased rates for unskilled labor and working class. So if you were a working class person or you didn't have skills, you didn't get anywhere. Insurance, profit sharing, and worker safety were all things that sort of helped the everyday worker. Now, there's time period also decreased the influence of unions, which we talked about a lot in the progressive era. Mass production. So this was a big deal. Wide variety of availability of consumer products at affordable prices. Because it was cheaper. Mass production made it cheaper to build things that were sold. And then the Model T was Henry Ford's car that essentially was the very first product that was done on an assembly line, where, you know, it would basically move down the conveyor belt. People put on certain things and it would move down, and people did more things and moved down. And, you know, by the end of the process, it was a completed car. Installment plans. So basically, if you couldn't actually afford to buy something, you could. This was when credit started to become popular, where you could go, all right, well, you know, I can't buy that car, so I'm going to take out a loan and I'm going to pay it in installments. And this happens to this day, and it is in some cases a really big problem. The impact of the automobile was massive because people started to be able to go from place to place, and the world suddenly got smaller. And here are some consumer ads, you know, advertisements that you would see. So, cut your costs, buy a Ford, Old Gold cigarettes, you know, Listerine mouthwash, you know, and the Model T right there for the young businessman. Every young businessman needs a Model T. Look at that. It was only $265. But in those days, people made like $5 a week, $10 a week. So anyway, all right. So make sure you do your exit ticket. All right. And make sure that you hand that in to me, Miss Marks. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not that much. And if you want to do extra credit this week, it's on the agenda. There is a video you can do. However, you have to make sure you do everything else this week before I can count that. So you have to do the exit ticket for today, exit ticket for tomorrow. Okay, the activity that Ms. Marks and I have planned for Wednesday and Thursday, and the assessment on Friday. You have to do all of those things and the extra credit assignments in order to get credit for those assignments. Okay, so even if you don't do one of them, I'm not counting your extra credit, even if you did it. Okay, all right, that's it. Talk to you later. Thank you for watching.